Y'all hear my grandbaby in the background? Like, I got a whole grandkids. I'm not gonna be out in these streets trying to, like, I don't have time to audition to be your wife. I'm just not doing it. I got things to do. Things to do, as you can hear by baby number 2 in the background making his presence known. Hey survivors and thrivers, I am back with another video, and this one is going to be about the marriage carrot, why I gave up chasing the marriage carrot and why life has been so much better because of it. So if you want to know what the marriage carrot is, why I said fuck the marriage carrot, and why life is better, then just keep watching. So a few weeks back, I wrote a post called Everybody Hates Chris, and with good reason. And that post was about Paige and Chris from Married at First Sight. And if you have been tuned in any sort of way, then you know that Chris from Married at First Sight is, I can't even call him a fuckboy. Like, it's way worse than that. It's on a whole nother level. But what you know is that pretty much the producers paired Paige with a man who is horrible. Like, those women on that cast should get together and file a class action for intentional infliction of emotional distress. That is how bad all of the men are this season. Like, even Vince, the one that we kind of think is okay, exhibits some tendencies that make me question just how healthy the relationship could ever be. And you can't tell me that the producer somehow managed to find all of these men who exhibit various degrees of not just like, oh, not okay behavior. We're talking toxic, we're talking abusive red flags that these men are showing. So anyway, I did a post on Chris after watching Chris for weeks and just being like, what in the entire hell fuck is going on here? So I did the post, and in the post I talked about the marriage carrot and, you know, how women are conditioned to chase the carrot. And then a little while later I did another post, but folks had questions about the marriage carrot. Oh, I know what it was. Derrick Jaxn resurfaced and the marriage carrot resurfaced. And so folks had questions about what the marriage carrot is. Marriage carrot is. So I figured I'd do a little video and I would talk about the marriage carrot. I would tell y'all, you know, again, like I said, why I'm not with it. So for some context, I'm a black girl who grew up being socialized to chase the marriage carrot. To be clear, the marriage carrot and all of the benefits that are attached to marriage are things that were only attached to heterosexual relationships. So when I'm talking about the marriage carrot, I'm talking very specifically about women who have been conditioned to believe that they need to marry men. And that part is important, right? That part with men having power in this situation and with women being the ones who are chasing whatever it is that they are promising matters, because it matters who ultimately becomes the expert or who we listen to on how to get this marriage thing. And it's why Derrick Jaxn and Steve Harvey wouldn't be famous or, you know, rich for telling women how to be in relationships if they were Derricka and or Stevie, right? It's also part of why Oprah is Oprah for giving advice on everything except relationships, right? But keep in mind, Oprah herself did not chase the marriage carrot, and I think that's important and it matters. So what is the marriage carrot? In its simplest form, the marriage carrot is a promise or potential for marriage. That's what it is. Marriage carrot is the promise or potential for marriage. But women are so strongly conditioned to want it that the mere promise or potential of that thing becomes a really dangerous tool for people who want to exploit that. See, if I have this thing and your entire life I have convinced you that you should want this thing, that is the only thing that is going to make you completely happy, whole, or respected, there are a lot of things that I can convince you to do in hopes of getting that thing, right? And the really important part about that is that it's the hopes of getting it. It's not even actually marriage. It's the hope or potential for marriage that becomes this dangerous tool for men who date women to use, because they use it to change the behaviors of women. And even with that, you know, promise and potential, like even engagements can be part of the marriage carrot process, right? Because an engagement is still not marriage. It is still the potential or promise of marriage. So how did I get to a point where I was like, fuck that marriage carrot? Like, okay. A little bit of background. I used to want marriage. I used to be one of those folks who really felt like I was never going to be happy if I did not get married. And I think one important part of that for me is that I had children at a really young age. So the idea of marriage as, a means of being whole, of being respected, was probably even more drilled in, right? Because I had done things out of order. So as a single mother, one of the things that, they socialize you to believe is that you can somehow have your out of wedlock children's existence sanctioned if you subsequently find somebody to marry you. So yeah, I used to chase the marriage carrot. There was a point in my life where I was very much into the idea that that was a part of what God intended, willed for my life, in fact, demanded of my life. And so that drove some components of that as well. And as is the case with Derrick Jaxn and his wife, right? I want to be clear that, like, very often religion is not just not divorced from this marriage carrot chasing. It is very much necessitated by it, right? Like they go hand in hand. So that was my story. I had children young, dated, did the whole 9, and was always doing it with the idea that marriage was the ultimate goal. At some point, some things just started not adding up, right? Like the idea of, if it is the case that God wills marriage for my life, in fact, that God requires that I be married in order to guilt-free enjoy the pleasures of sex and sexuality, right? Like, if that is the case, and in many instances, women outnumber men, then, like, it just stood to reason that some people would never have the opportunity to do that. If, according to what I was then, being taught and interpreting as God's word, if it was the case that every woman was supposed to marry a man, then some folks was just gonna be left out, and it just didn't make sense to me. So that was kind of my first, like, well, what happens if there's just not enough men to go around? And that was like my really early, young, like, things kind of don't make sense, right? And of course, there's been considerable evolution beyond that, to a point where it's just like God's will for my life is joy, and that's it. Like, that's it, right? None of the other things, none of the joy only if I, engage in respectability politics, joy only if I don't sin. Like, that's not it. God's will for my life is joy. So, I did the kissing frogs. Kissed a lot of them, too many of them, in fact, and did all the dating. And at some point, I think I was probably in my mid to late 30s, I just started thinking about why marriage was the thing I even wanted, like why I wanted to be married. I have long come to the understanding that I don't want to live with somebody permanently. Like, I don't want somebody in my home all the time. And so I'd already started having these really, like, what if my marriage looked different? What if my marriage didn't mean sleeping in the same bedroom? What if my marriage didn't even mean sleeping in the same house? What if my marriage meant separate homes? And the more I got to, like, thinking about what my ideal marriage looked like, I came to the understanding that my ideal marriage was not marriage at all. My ideal marriage was, in fact, staying single. Engaging with folks, dating folks, having commitment if that's what I wanted. But my ideal marriage was not the idea of waking up every day, looking at somebody in my space, having somebody touch my things, because of some legal contract that we had signed. My idea of commitment was waking up every day, choosing whether I wanted to be in your space, choosing whether I wanted to allow you in my space, choosing whether I wanted to stay committed, and choosing whether, the relationship was something that I wanted to continue, and being able to, the minute one or both parties said, this ain't it, go on about your business. And I don't have to change things. I don't have to leave my home. You don't have to leave your home. It doesn't have to be some long, drawn out legal process. So I was like, you don't want to be married, actually. You just want to, you just want to not be married, right? And I say that because what I want changes over time. What doesn't change is the marriage part, though. That didn't change. So after coming to, the understanding that I didn't want to be married, I was like, okay, I'm going to live my life in such a way that isn't about the idea of marriage. And this is where things got really, really interesting. And this is when I became aware of the marriage carrot. You start dating, and there are things that you talk about really early and things that you talk about later on. There are a couple of things that I talk about at this point immediately. Like, it's almost like, hi, I'm Cane Day. I'm not having any more children or raising any. Like, that's right off the bat. And that's because I think that's really important for some folks, because many people do want children. Many people want to have more. They want to raise more. They have some that are still, being raised. And I know that my life is not there. I've raised my children. My youngest child will be 20 years old next month. And yeah, I'm good. So that's one of the things that I talk about really early. Another thing that I talk about really early is the fact that I don't want to be married. And so as I started, coming into what I meant by not wanting to be married and what I wanted, I started sharing that with folks. And I noticed an interesting thing happened. When I told men I didn't want to be married, very often, not only did they not know what to do with that information, but they then didn't know how to treat me because of that information. And a few things hit home, right? Like, when a woman who dates men tells a man right off the bat that she does not want to be married, what he immediately knows is that he can't use the marriage carrot to change her behavior, right? So one of the things that I also don't do in dating relationships is, like, I'm not cooking for you. Like, I tell people, one, because cooking ain't my thing. It ain't my love language. But there's the whole, like, can she cook? Yeah, I can, but I ain't. Like, so don't even worry about it. But and I use that as one of the examples of things that, like, women will sometimes do as we are auditioning for marriage, as we are, dating in hopes of getting an engagement ring and subsequently a marriage, as we are showing that we are wifey material. That's a whole culture up in these streets, right? So, like, all of the things that you would typically do to show that you're wifey material are things that I don't do because I'm not trying to show you I'm wifey material at all. So I ain't cooking, for damn sure ain't cleaning nothing of yours in your situation. I'm not gonna be like, taking your kids out and, like, I'm not doing all of that because I'm not proving anything. And early on, men realize that, like, there's a lot of things that are off the table when a woman is not chasing the marriage carrot, and they would be stuck. Like, they would be straight up stuck, and almost like in real time, not almost, in real time would just kind of be like, oh, well, yeah. So what now? So yeah, it's a thing. And then I started paying attention to, my friends who did desire to be married. And not just my friends, but, like, just folks who dated men in general, or women who dated men in general. And really seeing just how much the promise or potential of marriage really shaped so much. Like, you watch women change. You watch women change what they like. You watch women change their behaviors. You watch women stop doing things that they like. All because of this conditioning that you are supposed to be willing to give up all the things in exchange for this marriage that's supposed to make you happy. And as we've seen in recent, we see all the time, not just recently. We can probably just see it if we look around us right now. We see marriage is not the thing that makes you happy. It is not the thing that makes you whole. It is not the thing that makes you respected, at least not by anyone whose respect you should actually care about. And so if marriage is not the thing that does that, then I'm going to use my time to chase the things that do that. Right? I'm going to use my time to chase joy and not to be chasing a thing that ultimately I realized I didn't even want in the first place. I'm not sure I ever wanted it. I've never been the type who wanted somebody in my space. And that's not to say that like I can't have a marriage that looks like whatever I want marriage to look like. But like I said, what I want marriage to look like is not marriage at all. So whenever I'm dating men and I'm having these interactions with them and I am watching them time and time again not know what to do when I talk about not wanting to be married, I started noticing something else. They started seeing it as a challenge. My desire to not be married became a thing that they wanted to change my mind about. So the other byproduct of not wanting to be married and making that known was that men actually started trying harder to please impress me, right? Because men are like every other, being, right? And so often we hear the stories about how a man has said that he doesn't want a relationship and a woman hears what she wants to hear and feels like she is special enough to change his mind, right? And what we don't talk about is the ways that men also do that. To be very, very clear, I'm speaking in binaries because that is how the marriage carrot has been applied, right? I'm speaking of men and women, and I'm speaking of cis men and cis women because the marriage carrot has been applied to those two groups, right? I'm not speaking in binaries because men and women are the only sex and genders to exist. That's not what's happening here. I digress, but it was a necessary digression and we gonna get back on track. And so the thing that I realized was they would start trying harder. So then it became this like, let me prove to you that you do in fact want marriage, that you just haven't met the right one and I am the right one. Here's the kicker to all of that. I don't for a second believe that any of that made those men decide that they really wanted to marry me. All that was happening was that they decided they really wanted me to want marriage so that I would then be willing to engage in the behaviors that showed them I wanted marriage and I was worthy of marriage. Whole time, I wasn't changing my mind, but you can't work harder to impress me. Because why not? So, here we are. I almost forgot my age for a second. I've only had one mimosa. I'm still having to think about it. I'm 41. I'm 41 years old. I have decided that I do not want to be married, and I date with that as just one of the deal breakers, right? That is my sort of thing. I'm not getting into any situation where there's this like, oh, we're dating with marriage in mind on the table. Like, I don't want it. I'm good across the board. A lot of people also assume that because I don't want marriage, that means I don't want commitment. Like, those two things are necessarily attached, right? No, I want commitment sometimes. Sometimes I don't want commitment either. And it's also that's the other thing too. It's like, well, why are you dating if you don't want marriage? What do you mean, why am I dating if I don't want marriage? I still enjoy people. Like, I enjoy company. I enjoy companionship. I enjoy sex. Why would I stop dating because I don't want to walk down an aisle? But it just speaks to the ways that we have been conditioned to believe that we can't have commitment without marriage. We can't have happiness without marriage. We can't have wholeness without marriage. Like, I can't even say that shit without rolling my eyes because I was there. Like, everybody is talking about Derrick Jaxn's wife. I'm sorry, her name is Danae. Let me clarify her name because I'm not going to be referring to her as Derrick Jaxn's wife. Danae Jaxn. And there are so many, like, there's 50 things wrong with the way people approach that. The first thing that we kind of expected to happen is that Derrick Jaxn whole ass cheated, and yet Danae Jaxn is the person who was subsequently ridiculed and laughed at and, mocked, because that's how the patriarchy works. But, people have gone to her social media pages and she definitely, seems to be very much attached to the notion of marriage and marriage to Derrick in particular as God's will for her life, and that God wants her to get through that and all of those sorts of things. And I get it. I get how, you know, being so attached to organized religion, in this case, Christianity, really just has you in that space where you believe it. Like I wasn't where she is, but I was definitely, you know, far enough gone in the sauce to be like, this is what God wants from me, and I need to do this because that's what God wants. And ultimately what that leads to in many cases, right? Chasing the marriage carrot, and subsequently sometimes even obtaining it, leads to us being in abusive, toxic situations, because we are so, this is the thing that I need. And so if this is the thing that I need, then surely I must be willing to sacrifice. And what am I willing to sacrifice? I must be willing to sacrifice my time. I must be willing to sacrifice my money. I must be willing to sacrifice my peace. I must be willing to sacrifice my joy. I must be willing to sacrifice myself, because this is the thing that I have been taught is what I'm supposed to do. And when you are taught that with religion as a foundation, when you are taught that with the fear of hell in the back of your mind, it's real. It's so real. And I think that's also part of what changed for me, right? When I gave up on the notion of the existence of hell, I wasn't afraid of a lot of things anymore, right? Like, you're a lot less afraid of what sin does to you when you're not scared of going to hell at the end of the day. And this, don't get it twisted. Like, y'all gonna do what y'all want to do in the comments under this video, but I'm not here to debate the notion of hell. Like, my view, my faith, my experience with God is one where God is not trying to make me burn in hell for eternity. Like, if God is better than me, and God is better than, you know, other people who claim to love us, and none of the people who claim to love me are people who would simultaneously burn me in hell for the rest of my life. That's not love for me. And that's not love for anybody. And so if people who love me should not be willing to watch me burn in hell, or be willing to harm me on purpose, and to do so forever, then I can't then believe that God, who's supposed to be a being that is much better than human beings, I can't subsequently believe that God is like, yeah, I'm gonna burn you in hell forever. So that's mine. That's my faith. That's my walk. You walk how you want to walk. But because I changed that walk, the idea of like burning in hell for fornicating and for so many other things, it was a weight off. But I can see how, I say all that to say, I could see how for Danae, these things lead her to the place where she is. And I see how men like Derrick Jaxn help keep women in that place. Paige and Chris, same deal. Homeboy, after all of his fuckboy activities, after all of the things he did to her, the whole time that he is doing this, he's talking about he a preacher, or used to be a preacher, and he has one of his pastors come on the show with him, and like his whole introduction was all about like, oh, I'm from a family of faith, and I'm all about the Lord. Every time Paige is like pulling away from his toxicity, he pulls her back in, and very often he's pulling her back in on a couple of things. He's pulling her back in either by like, oh, I'm attracted to you now, or oh, let's have Bible study. We need Jesus in this situation. Like, that's what's wrong. It's not that I'm a fuckboy. It's that like we haven't prayed hard enough together. And Paige, because she, very much like Danae, also subscribes to the notion of God being a part of this union, keep falling for it. Like, all you hear Paige say time and time again is, this is God's will for my life. God wants this for my life. Repeatedly, she talks about God. And all you see on the Twitter, the black Twitter, is like, girl, this ain't God's will for your life. Stop putting Jesus up in this situation, because he is nowhere present. He's not here. He did not sanction this. He did not, no, none of that. Like, this is all Married at First Sight producers doing. And trust me, they are not God at all. Not even a little bit. And so through both of these women, we see the role that organized religion plays in marriage carrots, in fuckboys who dangle marriage carrots, in women who unfortunately, you know, are harmed through this very deep socialization. And I can't say that enough, right? This is not about, it's not about this very conscious, like, I'm gonna be out here doing whatever it takes to get married, right? Because even a very conscious, I'm gonna be out here doing whatever it takes to get married, it's often attached to the notion that, like, this is what I have to do. Y'all know how people act when it's, oh, Miss versus Mrs., right? Like, y'all know how people act. Y'all know. Listen, if you have ever done anything in your life that is not marriage and also gotten married, you already know how social media reacts to those things. Like, you get married and it's, oh, congratulations, yes, whoop-de-woo. Then publish a book. See which one gets more attention, right? Get married, or, you know, do something with your children that you consider to be an accomplishment, and see which one gets more attention. Like, you know, I very clearly remember calling one of my uncles when I was graduating from college. Now, I'm a whole ass high school dropout, first generation student, went to college with 3 babies, calling my uncle to invite him to my graduation, and he was like, oh, I thought you were calling me to tell me you were getting married. What? Like, and that's the level of energy he kept, even after it was like, no, it's graduation. Okay. Like, so we see how much weight society puts on this, and why that could be important to a lot of people, right? Like, we're people, we like approval, right? We like to fit in, we like to feel respected, we like to feel loved and cared for. And when people attach feeling respected and feeling loved and feeling cared for to this idea of marriage, telling you, it's a very dangerous tool. And before anybody gets started with the whole, oh my goodness, she talking about she don't want to chase the marriage carrot because maybe done by 3 proposals, boo. 3 proposals. Praise God that I did not ever walk down the aisle with any of those people. And that's just it, right? Like, even that part, marriage was the goal. It was the thing I was supposed to do. I could have very well, if anything had been different at that time, or at those times, like, I would have ended up going through with marriages 2 men that I absolutely would have either been divorced from or involved in very abusive and toxic and unhealthy relationships if I had gone through with those. So I'm very grateful that I did not, for whatever reason, see any of those proposals through, see any of those engagements through. And I really shouldn't even be trying to, like, justify or sanction anything with, like, but don't think, like, I ain't gotta prove that to, like, nobody, because if y'all thought I wasn't marriage material, it really doesn't matter. Like, I don't want to be marriage material. I just want to mind my business and hydrate. That's it. So yeah, so marriage carrot, the potential or promise of marriage. That is all it is. And it is a thing that men have been taught and conditioned to use to their benefit. It is a thing that they can, I mean, if I'm a man and I'm dating you and I know that you want marriage so bad, like, man, do you know what I could have you doing? Like, do you know? Oh, just like in hopes that I will marry you. And that is also how, because you'll ask, you'll be like, how does this dude pull women? Like, it'll be a dude who you're like, he ain't got no money. He not cute. His personality not even that great. Like, how is he pulling women? Marriage carrots. Marriage carrots. That's it. Like, that is how men who ain't got nothing to offer nobody pull women. Marriage carrots. Because the thing that they do have to offer is the potential or promise of a marriage. They get to offer you this thing that you've been told you should want so bad. And that's all they got. They ain't got to bring nothing else. Everybody want to talk about what women bring to the table. That's all you hear. What women bring to the table. Blah, blah, blah. Men don't bring nothing but the marriage carrot, and it will still pull women. Still pull them. Like, they ain't got nothing. So yeah, no, I'm not with it. I'm, you know, and it's, the thing is people were asking like, I want to hear you say more about this. And I was like, I really thought that like this was a thing that a lot of people were doing. I didn't think that this, you know, and I don't think I'm unique at all. Like there's plenty of women who have said like, fuck the marriage carrot, and they just haven't used those words. Like I think Tracy Ellis Ross has very clearly been like, nah, I'm good without marriage or some kids. Like she's been very vocal about that. And plenty of other folks. And so I've never really elaborated on it because I just kind of thought it was a thing, like for most of us. Our grandson does not care about my filming life. Do you hear me? But yeah, that's where I am. I am living my life like it's golden. I am enjoying, well, I'm not enjoying dating right now because like, you know, panini. But otherwise, like I enjoy the freedom to date as I choose to. I enjoy the freedom to walk away from anything that does not serve me and everything that does not serve me. I enjoy the freedom to engage with other people and not be doing so with these expectations of lifelong commitment. I'm not the same person that I was 5 years ago. I am not going to be the same person in 5 years. Why would I tie myself legally to another human being and I don't even know who I'm gonna be in 5 years? Plus, Navy ain't going after nobody for that money when I die, okay? Y'all won't get nobody, won't be no spouse for you to go after, okay? When I die, you just won't get your money. Like I said, I definitely thought that more folks than not were saying fuck the marriage carrot these days. So I would love to hear, like, you know, I'm not gonna say, are you still chasing the marriage carrot? Because like, then that sounds a little whatever the case is. But like, how do you view marriage in your life? Do you view marriage as a desire? Do you view marriage as a requirement for happiness? Do you view marriage as the thing that you need to make you whole? And if marriage is not the thing that you view as the thing that will get you happiness, wholeness, and respect, then what is that thing? What is that thing? For me, that thing is, you know, it's healing. It's constant healing. It is joy while I'm healing. It is a commitment to evolution. It is grace for who I was before. Yeah, those are parts of the things. And in the meantime, in between time, I like to kick it with people. I like to kick it. Don't get it wrong. Don't get it twisted. I like to kick it. Just don't want to put a ring on my finger and take you home forever. That's it. I think that's cool. At the very least, if you are going to turn to relationship gurus, turn to folks who might know what they're talking about. I don't know. So, as I said, those are my thoughts on the marriage carrot, why I'm not chasing the marriage carrot, and why I am living life just fine on the other side of the marriage carrot. Let me know your thoughts. You know, comments always open. You know, inbox is open. Don't slide in there with no BS or nothing like that. But, you know, slide through if you got something to say. In the meantime, in between time, thank y'all for joining me. As always, I hope that you have a positive, peaceful, and productive day. And if you only get to choose 2 of those, go with positive and peaceful. Bye, survivors and thrivers.